Welcome to the show. I am your host, Bryan Lee Whatley. Our story begins tonight with our very special guest, Jonna Bianco. She is the president and founder of the American Bondholders Foundation. Ms. Bianco brings an encyclopedic understanding of American bonds and where they are being held. Achieving liquidity for ABS bondholders has been her sole professional focus since 2001. She recently became only the 5th woman ever to be named to the board of directors of the National Defense University Foundation. She sits on the following boards of the United States Congress EMP Caucus, which is the Task Force on National and Homeland Security, the Prague Security Studies Institute in the Czech Republic, the Prague Security Studies Institute in Washington, D.C., the Center for Security Policy in Washington, the Tennessee Freedom Coalition in Nashville, Tennessee. Our topic tonight is about the U.S. debt ceiling and what China owes America. It's refusing to allow redemption of billions of dollars in bonds. Where is this money? When can we get it back? What is our government doing, and how can you help? Where will this money go once we get it back? These are the focal points Jonna has held firmly for many years, fighting here on the soil of American land, for American people, fighting for your money, for my money, and for the United States of America's money. If there's one thing you will notice from Jonna is her passion and love and drive for what she does and why she does it. Our musical guest tonight is Sokolof's Javitch with JMR Productions singing an appropriate song I love titled This is America's Moment. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Welcome, Jonna. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
I'm excited to talk to you because everything that's going on about our economy, it's all about money and, where can we get some more stuff in? And I think this is great. So I'm excited to have you on here. This is it. When I started reading about it and doing the research about it, I was just literally surprised on how much is out there and how much is needed to be paid back and everything else. So before we get into all that, can you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
I think you pretty well covered it. I have spent the last 11 years representing approximately 20,000 American families who are bondholders in the United States, spanning 44 states here in the U.S., that in good faith bought sovereign bonds from the government of China that China refuses to honor and pay back. And I've made that my sole focus and number one priority to collect this debt, bring China to the table amicably, and resolve their outstanding debts that they owe to the American people.
Well, that sounds like a pretty big task to take on, to be honest with you. So I'm sure you stay pretty busy with this. And I couldn't imagine. I mean, I'm just worried about my credit card bills sometimes. And you're taking on such a huge issue. And that's, to be honest with you, that's pretty impressive for you standing up for
it. Well, thank you. It has been a big task, but a good task. It's an honor to have the opportunity to represent all of these holders and to present this issue before our United States Congress and our executive branch and State Department and Treasury. It's an ongoing education process to them to learn about this issue and to understand the issue, which is 99% a political issue and not just a legal issue. And it's politics that have prevented these good American citizens from collecting on money that is owed them, as well as money that's owed the U.S. government. Because not only do we have 20,000 plus bondholder members here in the U.S. government is holding the very same bonds we are, that they use taxpayers' dollars to purchase, and then have allowed them to remain in default instead of holding China accountable to pay their debts and obligations back to the American government for and on behalf of the American people.
Well, and that kind of surprises me about how other countries will pay some off and some won't, and but for some reason China, and just to be clear for our listeners and everything, this is not about the Chinese people. This is strictly a governmental political issue that we're trying to address. Jonah's trying to address and bring to the light of everybody.
Absolutely. This is government debt. This is sovereign debt. No different than a U.S. Treasury bond. Governments issue treasuries, just as we issue U.S. treasuries, that individuals and foreign countries and governments can purchase as an investment. This isn't a business corporation that went bankrupt many, many years ago. This is an actual sovereign debt from a country who has become quite a superpower in the global economy today.
From some of the research I was pulling off your website, and everybody can go check this out at, I think it's American, let me make sure I get this correct, AmericanBondholdersFoundation.com. That's AmericanBondholdersFoundation.com. There's all kinds of stuff up there, but I want to go ahead and throw out that website so people can start looking it up immediately and seeing some of the bonds and everything that you have up there. But I've got like 3 listed. I would kind of call them main problems. One of them would be like China has defaulted on much of its 1912 through 1941 debt to the U.S. citizens and the government. Why is it just that particular time frame?
These bonds were originally issued by the Republic of China, what we know today as being Taiwan. However, and keep in mind, these were long-term debt, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50-year-long bond treasury issues. However, the Republic of China was ousted. They fled to what we know today as Taiwan, and the communist regime came in and took over in 1949. And since that time, they have refused to honor any debts or obligations from any predecessor governments or previous governments, which is a violation of the international law of successor government doctrine. The same concept would apply from the U.S. if we took the position, say, for example, to the $1.3 trillion in treasury bonds that China holds of ours, which is approximately 8 to 9% of our holdings, of the total 100% of U.S. Treasury holdings. We could take the position and say, China, all of the bonds that you purchased during the Reagan administration, the Clinton, the Bush administration, those were different regimes. Those were different administrations, different governments, even different political parties. So we're not going to honor those because that was from somebody different. That's the basic concept, the basic principle that the People's Republic of China has taken, and yet they have enjoyed the development and infrastructure that their country has been able to grow and build as a result of all of these investments from American people, as well as the U.S. government from these investments for these bonds. And of course, they brag internationally as to what cash cows they have become. But then again, you and I would be cash cows too if we borrowed money from everybody and then refused to pay it back. And became the big bully, threatening, doing the saber rattling, chain rattling that, oh, well, we're not going to buy any more of your treasuries, or we'll create trade issues and economic problems for you if you force us to pay this debt. And that's exactly what China has done.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I can understand the time frame now between 1912 to 1941. So that makes great sense. But China has paid back, and the second problem that I have here is China has settled the same debts with Great Britain in 1987. Why did they pick them? And how come they haven't settled with us? What's wrong with us?
Well, in 1987, China paid for the very same bond that U.S. citizens are holding. They did pay to Great Britain. But the difference is Great Britain demanded, under the leadership of Margaret Thatcher, that and basically said to China, right now you have unfettered access to our capital market. We're not going to allow you to issue any more stocks or bonds on our soil for you or any of your state-owned enterprises or businesses that are owned and controlled by your government until you start settling up on the ones that you've defaulted on. The problem is the U.S. government has never told China that. And that's the reason China has continued to enjoy open and unfettered access to U.S. capital markets. They have been able to sidestep this issue, have been able to enjoy a double set of standards, a double set of rules, because they're not held accountable. At a time when, in the last 24 months, China has downgraded the sovereign credit rating of the United States of America, and yet we have never defaulted to them. They are paid tens and tens of billions of dollars in interest payments alone off of Chinese-held U.S. Treasury. They downgraded us 3 times. And yet our own credit rating agencies here, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch, are very much aware that China has been in default on this issue. Not only were they put on notice by the American Bondholders Foundation, but also by the Securities and Exchange Commission, that they chose to ignore this issue and not move China to their proper classification according to their own website, these credit rating agencies' websites, of their proper metrics criteria that they use to rate countries with. They should be moved to selective default. They chose to ignore this issue, not move them to selective default, clearly, because they have a conflict of interest, because these credit rating agencies make money by giving high ratings and high credit status for China and for these companies. That's what they get paid to do.
Oh, wow.
And so they simply ignore the issue.
Wow. So, okay, so I can understand then there with number 2, when I was asking about China settled the same debts with Great Britain in 1987, because Great Britain just basically you got to pay us off or we're not going to do this other stuff for you anymore. And China saw that and we're just not doing that. And, okay, so that makes perfectly good sense then as well. Yeah, U.S. needs to raise up its muscle and apply those same kind of standards to it. The third one that I have is we have listed here is an era when our debt to the Chinese is at historic highs. Why has the U.S. government not brought the Chinese to the table on this constructive fashion? So why? I guess I don't understand. Again, why aren't we doing this? What is so scary about China, or that our politicians are so worried about what they're going to do?
I don't think it's so much what is so scary, other than
that's a bad word. I didn't mean that word.
Other than shortchanging political contribution, Wall Street firms, big political PACs, corporate America, wanting to get in bed with the Chinese and do business in China. Everybody wants access to that 1.3 billion populace over there. So they believe that if we're the nice guy and we keep giving in to China's demands, that'll open the door to get business licenses, banking licenses, insurance licenses for all of these companies to be able to gain access in China to do business, thinking that it will help them prosper. I mean, look at our manufacturing base. It has all disappeared out of the U.S. and it's been moved over to China. That's why we have such a high unemployment rate, because basically our entire manufacturing base has shut down. However, once people get over there, they realize, we have a problem. We have a problem because of intellectual property theft, whereby that's why we see all these knockoffs, which cost American businesses hundreds of billions of dollars in losses. And then we have additional issues involving China, from weapons proliferation, North Korean nuclear crisis, Iranian nuclear crisis, trade issues, human rights violations. The list in currency manipulation is another major issue. The list of problems with China is a mile long. This just only adds one more issue to the table that our congressional leaders, our American leadership, our administration don't want to have to address, don't want to have to deal with. And so they keep kicking the can down the road, and kicking it down the road, kind of like they are the debt ceiling right now. You know, we already have Geithner out there pounding the pavement of the importance that we're going to have to raise our debt ceiling another $1 trillion in order to meet the demand. When in reality, we don't need to raise our debt ceiling. What we need to do is bring China in and say, here's all this paper that you've defaulted on. So we're going to pay you in your own paper and reduce your holdings that you have of the U.S. and settle this with the American bondholders, which creates an economic stimulus without government handouts, without raising taxes, which provides an avenue for economic stimulus, growth, and job opportunity. So we don't need to raise our debt ceiling when money is owed to us, that we can reduce our debt ceiling.
That's interesting. There's 3 things about when they defaulted, the same debts of what Great Britain did to get them off, the financial bonds and the problems, and then the fact that we're not doing the same things with it because for whatever other political reasons. we're trying to get something out of it. And you made some really good points there about, we do have a large manufacturing system over there. We do have these other things that are going on over there that then turns around and causes problems again. And I've always just kind of wondered, this may be a little tangent real quick, but I've always kind of wondered on how much of our manufacturing laws and copyright infringements and everything else that goes on over there has to deal with the fact of, or how much money is our country actually saving by sending manufacturing over there. And so if they're one of
our country's not saving anything.
Well, I mean, the companies.
A major loss. The only profitability it goes into the pockets of those few at the top in corporations that decided to sell out the American people, jump ship, and go do business in China.
Well, are we calling for economic sanctions against them, or should we just not buy anything that says made in China? I mean, they make some pretty good products in terms of, at low cost. I mean, even if you look at like Walmart stores and things like that, how do we go about solving something like this?
Well, it's a matter of of the American people. Number one, start buying made in USA and stop buying made in China. Number one. Number two, the American people need to reach out to their congressional leaders in the House and the Senate and send them a message. No more double set of rules for China. China needs to abide by the same rules. We get debts, we have to pay our bills. If we don't pay our bills, what happens? We have creditors after us. Our credit rating is destroyed. Our credit rating is downgraded significantly. Why should China be held to a different set of standards? They need to be held to the same that all of us are held by.
Okay.
These bonds, these treasuries from China were bought, let's say, to help our then ally in the war back then. And remember, these were long-term debts.
Right.
Most of these bonds weren't due to mature until 1960, 1967. And these people have been holding on to these bonds in good faith, believing that China will resolve their issue and they'll be held accountable to pay this debt. And recently, as of March 13th, Congressman Ken Calvert out of California issued a letter because they were informed of U.S. government holdings of the very same bonds. And they had the evidence to substantiate that. So Ken Calvert, along with members of Congress like Senator Inhofe and Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn, Congressman Frank Wolf, and several others, signed onto a letter that went to the GAO calling for a complete inventory and accounting of all U.S. government-held Chinese bonds.
Wow.
And as a nice touching book into that, on April 6th, Congressman Gary Miller sent a letter to Secretary Geithner at the U.S. Treasury. Congressman Gary Miller is the chairman of the International Monetary Policy and Trade Committee in the House. He sent a letter to Secretary Geithner asking the very same questions and requiring an inventory of all U.S. government-held Chinese defaulted bonds, and also wanted to know what has Treasury done to help these American citizens collect on this foreign debt that they're owed. Furthermore, what does the U.S. Treasury intend on doing to collect on the ones that the U.S. government is holding?
Oh, that's
All
a good
of
point.
this information is up on our website and those government congressional documents for people to view and see. And the American people need to contact their congressional leader and ask them to support this action to hold China accountable.
Okay. I wanted to go ahead and put that out there at the beginning of the show, pretty much about how people can step up and start doing some of this stuff, because I'm going to ask you about it a little bit. I'm going to repeat the question a little bit later to make sure that everybody understands, and just in case they missed it or whatever else, that they know exactly on how to do it and for what all we need to stand up for. I'd like to break down a couple of things, if you don't mind, in terms of like the violations, where the transgressions include such things as, like, to start off, one is the violation of successor of government doctrine. Can you explain that a little bit more in detail about what that entails?
Certainly.
Okay.
That is called the international law of successor government doctrine. Basically means that, and I'll use Iraq as a very prime example of that.
I'm an Iraqi war veteran, so.
Which actually involves China. When the United States chose to go in and remove Saddam Hussein from power, that would create a change in leadership within that country.
Yep. Agree.
Immediately, China went running to the United Nations, calling and mandating that international law be upheld of successor government doctrine. What that means is that whatever government comes into play or replaces that previous government, they are still obligated for the financial obligations of the previous or predecessor government. That's international law of successor government doctrine. So whoever comes into power that replaces the leadership of that country is still responsible for the debts and financial obligations that the previous administration of that government had.
Okay.
And the reason was, for example, in Iraq, China was $10 billion on contracts. And they had pending contracts for oil exploration, natural gas exploration, etc. And they wanted all of those agreements that they had made during the Saddam Hussein regime to be 100% upheld. Now, keep in mind, China is not a member to Paris Club or the International Center for Settlement Disputes, and many of these international organizations and world bodies. If you remember during the Iraq issue, through Paris Club negotiations, most every country, in fact all other countries, either forgave 100% or at least a minimum of 80% of Iraq's debt. You know, the United States forgave 80% of its debt that Iraq owed to the United States.
Right.
China was the only one who got 100% and some of what was owed them. And the reason is because China is not a member to these organizations. They're not considered a member state to like the International Center for Settlement Disputes or to the Paris Club. Therefore, they are not governed by their rules or mandates or treaties and agreements among other member states, which is other countries. So they ignore those rules and regulations, just like they ignore the rules and regulations of international successor doctrine, unless, of course, it is money that is owed them, and then they mandate those laws be upheld. And that's what I meant by China lives by a double set of standards and a double set of rules. And this government, the United States government, needs to hold China accountable to abide by the same rules and regulations as the United States and other countries.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense because we were talking earlier when I mentioned one of the problems was that China defaulted much on its 1912 through 1941 debt to the U.S. citizens and the government because the government changed, and they said, oh, no, they're not going to pay for anything. But now, like after the Iraq thing, they wanted their money back. So that's interesting on how that on the double standard there.
Exactly.
Wow.
And with China, everything is a double standard, regardless of the violation or the issue.
Wow.
And until the U.S. government begins to hold China accountable and hold their feet to the fire and make them abide by the same rules, these types of problems are only going to continue to escalate.
For another double standard here, we have the World Trade Organization violation. Can you discuss that a little bit?
Absolutely. The United States, American people have been very good to China. We took China from a third world country, brought them into most favored nation status, and then moved them right into the World Trade Organization, WTO, which has made them the superpower that they are today. Part of the terms and conditions of that World Trade Organization agreement when they entered was that they agreed to be a financially responsible economic trading partner. Defaulting on debts and then refusing to honor those obligations is a violation of that WTO terms and conditions of agreement of entry.
Doesn't that kind of play back against the violation of successor? Does it grow on that one as well?
Absolutely, it does.
Yeah.
And recently, the current Obama administration, as of a couple of weeks ago, filed some very heavy duty, along with several other countries, trade sanctions against China for trade violations, which resulted as a result of the rare earth embargo and control of rare earth minerals, which they control about 90% of.
So are we asking the WTO, the World Trade Organization, to disband them or remove them, or are we just asking for them, the WTO, to enforce China to honor its honor?
We're asking the WTO to enforce those terms and conditions of agreement that China agreed to abide by, and to issue sanctions, which is based on tariffs, trade tariffs, and sanctions and violations against China for those actions.
Okay, but not necessarily to remove them from the World Trade Organization.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. I can agree with that. I think that's pretty smart. I think that's really good. To uphold them to the WTO, but overall, I think they kind of might have a good role in it. But you said something interesting earlier that we help bring them to a superpower. How exactly do we do that?
Through trade, doing business with China, allowing China to bring their products into the United States and globally, helping them foster manufacturing, growth, and development, and Americans supporting that by buying their products and supporting just as other countries have done. And I think evidenced by the trade deficits that we have with them, obviously we buy a lot more from China than they buy from us. And yet, their population is 3-4 times what we are. So the American people have been very good to China in helping foster growth through financial growth by supporting them through trade.
Okay, so it's not bad that we actually help create them a superpower. It's just the fact that now that they're a superpower, then they need to again pay the debts that are owed back to us and the money and all that other stuff, right? So we don't mind them being a superpower. We just want them to pay up.
Well, we mind them being a superpower when their ultimate goal and objective is to replace the United States as a leader in the global economy and in the world, which is their goal and objective. And the economic growth that we have given them has really not helped their people. It's helped build their military. It's helped build their weapons proliferation programs. It's helped in a very, very negative sense. So it's not been a positive growth and development as growth and development would be effective here, for example, in the United States for individual people and families. In China, it's 100% government and their military and strengthening their power. That's why you see, China's moving to for their currency to be the new currency, global currency versus the U.S. dollar, for example.
Right.
So all of the growth and development that has been created for China to better their people, to better their economy, to better China overall, has turned out to be in a negative to the national security and national defense of the United States of America.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so then I definitely understand that. One of the things I like about what we do here is the money is given back. We have these different organizations and welfare options, and I'm not going to get into all the political stuff that we do here for the people here. I think we could definitely do more for ourselves. But I was just wondering, in terms of that superpower, and you mentioned it perfectly, was the fact that all the money that they have for being a superpower isn't necessarily going back for its people, and I think that's very bad. And I think that's just a shame. It really is, for them not to look out for the people who are part of their country. And I mean, I can understand. I was a military person. I can understand building a military, and I can understand a couple of other things. But overall, if you don't support the people of your country, then you really need to change. And if all that money is going to them, then that's a huge problem. So thank you for pointing that out. I was kind of wondering. I was like, where's all this money going to? And I was hoping you were just going to say schools and hospitals and things like that, but apparently it's not.
No, it's not. In fact, a big issue right now within the military is the fact, and a major issue we have with China, is the fact that it's China that's arming through their weapons proliferation programs the various enemies that we're fighting overseas across the pond in Afghanistan and Iraq and other places. Them and Russia and a few others are the ones that's providing all the weaponry and munitions that are killing American soldiers. So that's a major issue.
Okay. Well, that hit a soft spot there. Being American, being an American soldier, that hit a soft spot. Okay, another violation.
That is fact, and that is true, sir.
Well, thanks for the fact. Number 3 is no, honestly, I mean, I really do thank you for bringing that out to everybody's attention. Number 3 is for Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC violations. You talked about this a little bit earlier. Can you go into a little bit more detail on this one?
Absolutely. We have three major credit rating agencies: Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch. They get what is called an NRSRO status, or certification or license, through the Securities and Exchange Commission. NRSRO stands for Nationally Recognized Statistical Rating Organization. That's what makes them a credit rating agency. In order to become licensed through the SEC, they have to submit a metrics criteria as to how they rate countries, businesses, etc. And that is published. It's published on their website. Based on that criteria, the Securities and Exchange Commission determines whether they can have a license. Those credit rating agencies' job is supposed to be independent and not biased by any means. However, they're conflicted. When you get paid money to give a rating, and if you give a low rating, they're not going to come back to you for a rating. They're going to go to your competition down the street. So in other words, if Standard & Poor's has got a contract to rate XYZ company from China, and all of a sudden they give a low rating, well, Standard & Poor's is not going to get that contract next time, and they're going to go down the street to Moody's or to Fitch to get ratings. So it becomes a money-making industry that feeds on giving these high ratings. So the ABF issue of the collection of this defaulted sovereign debt and then has been sent to the credit rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch, advising them that they need to move, first of all, bringing it to their attention, providing them with all the legal briefs, all of the documents, filing that at the SEC under an official complaint, and not only did the ABF send this information to the credit rating agencies, but the Securities and Exchange Commission sent it to them as well. So they're very much aware that this issue exists. However, they have chose to ignore it in complete violation of their published metrics criteria that they give to the SEC in order to get their license. The SEC takes a political position so as not to rock the boat with state or Treasury administration and says, well, we really don't have any control over these credit rating agencies or what they do. Well, that's actually not true, because they're the ones that control whether they have a license or not. And so simply the credit rating agencies choose to ignore it, and the higher rating they get, the more money they make. So at a time when China, again, has downgraded the sovereign credit rating of the U.S., to which we have not defaulted to them at all, or anybody else for that matter, they've downgraded us 3 times in the last 24 months.
They've downgraded our rating?
They downgraded the United States credit rating status. That is correct.
Oh, wow.
At the same time, these, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch, who know about this issue, have continued to increase China's credit rating status.
Now,
because that's how they make their money.
God, wow. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this.
Yes, there is. And my job is to continue to raise the level of awareness of this issue to our congressional leaders and their staff, to our administration, state and treasury, and more importantly, to the American people, because they really, really need to know how bad they're really getting screwed by China. And not just by China, but by our own U.S. government and their refusal to act on this issue and hold China accountable to the same rules and regulations that we have to abide by. And instead of paying the tens and tens of billions of dollars that we pay in interest payments to China every year, every quarter as well, for on interest in U.S. Treasuries that they hold of ours, we need to do what is called a debt swap. Debt swaps are done around the world every single day, and China needs to be held accountable.
Oh, okay.
In other words, exchange paper for paper on a debt swap.
Oh, debt swap. Oh, okay. Well, if you don't mind.
And amazingly, let me just add this, please.
Yes, definitely.
This is not something unique. This is not something that is uncommon. To have a foreign country pay for its debts and obligations they've defaulted on is not uncommon practice. In 1933, under President Roosevelt, and Secretary of State Cordell Hull and the then Secretary of the Treasury. They got together and said, we need to do something to protect American citizens from foreign countries that default on their debt. Because we're just the little guy. We're not a big banking or financial institution, and for certain, we're not a government. So we need to implement something that can protect citizens who buy government sovereigns, which, by the way, the bonds that American citizens are holding were sold to the New York Stock Exchange, advertised in the New York Times, and were, endorsed by major banks like HSBC and Deutsche Bank, all who made significant money up front to issue these bonds for the government of China. But they needed to create an organization to protect the rights of individual citizens. So they created what was called the Foreign Bondholders Protective Council. And that entity has been successful in collecting on 47 previous bond settlements of foreign countries that defaulted on sovereign bonds to U.S. citizens. They were successful only because the United States government contacted the leadership of that foreign country and said, you have a bill to pay. You sold bonds to our citizens, you took their money, and now you've defaulted and you haven't paid them back. We recommend that you get a hold of the Foreign Bondholders Protective Council and you negotiate a settlement and a resolve, because the U.S. government wants you to pay this debt. And those people did. They came to the table honorably, they paid their bill, and that was the end of it. Those bonds got paid. The U.S. government has failed to do so with regards to China, and I might add Russia and several other countries. So there is precedent for what we're asking for in the collection of this debt. Other countries have been very honorable, paid their debts to the American people and the U.S. government. China needs to do the same.
Okay, I agree. How do you feel? I'm going to quote President Obama real quick and ask you how you feel about this. It's he was recently asserted, and this is the quote: "The bottom line is the United States cannot be expected to stand by if there is not reciprocity in trade and economic relations. Where we see rules broken, we'll continue to speak out and bring action." That was stated by President Obama November the 11th, 2011, speaking of China at the 2011 APEC summit in Hawaii. How do you feel he's doing in regards to all this?
Well, I don't think he's doing enough. I believe that was a political statement, knowing that he's on a political campaign and running for re-election. I think that there's a lot that President Obama can do to hold China accountable, certainly in the case of the American Bondholders Foundation issue and holding China accountable to pay their debts and obligations. He has an opportunity to right a wrong and an injustice that has been bestowed upon the American people and these bondholders for decades, that has been ignored by previous administration, again, kicking the can down the road. President Obama has an opportunity to force this payment and to hold China accountable and do what's right by the American people and by our government. And we're hoping that he does so. If not, I guess the headlines should read, "Did the Obama administration just forgive $1 trillion of debt owed to the American people by China?"
Yeah, I don't think that headline would go over too well.
I don't think it would either, not in an election year, not in any year for that matter.
Yeah,
exactly. At the end of the day, the American people don't know about this issue. And my job is to raise the level of awareness of this issue and let the American people know what's at stake. Because if we continue to raise our debt ceiling, they're going to be the responsible parties to pay that debt back, and their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren, until we stop this double set of standards and double set of rules and start holding China accountable to play by the same set of rules. It's only going to continue to get worse. And the American people need to, today, contact their congressional leaders and say the buck stops here. No more double set of rules for China. China needs to pay what they owe us.
Okay. Honestly, I think this is amazing. You bringing this to the attention of so many people that you have. It's I said this earlier, and it's such a big thing to take on, and I'm just so incredibly impressed about the work that you guys are doing at your company here and how you're going about it. It's very, very impressive. Now, once we get finished with China, though, you mentioned there was a couple of other countries that are still owed the U.S. a lot of money. So what about them? Is this just the first step for your organization, or is this is going to be it, or do you plan on going after other countries, or you hope that to find a good general solution in terms of solving this, of holding all countries accountable, and then money finally coming in from them?
One step at a time. Right now, I'm solely focused on the Chinese debt, and I think that by collecting on the Chinese debt, sends a message to other countries that if you owe American citizens, you're going to have to come to the table and pay your bill because you will be held accountable. Somebody's got to stick up for the American people and our government and hold people accountable.
I like that, one step at a time, one country at a time. I like that philosophy. That's very, very good. And I really do hope that that's what the statement comes out, and that's exactly what it's sounding like in terms of, let's get this from China, and then all the other countries come along and say, look, the U.S. isn't playing around anymore. They're starting to put economic sanctions. The American people are starting to stand up against, righting or standing up for righting the wrong, bringing all these things to light. And I'm a full believer in knowledge is power for the American people. And so the more that they know,
that is the key to success. Thank you.
Yeah, and so the more they know, the more that they can help out. And so that's where I was going to come up again in terms of, how can people help? So it's writing the congressman. What else? What else did we mention earlier in terms of how can people help out that I missed?
Send a message to China. You expect Americans to be good to you. You need to reciprocate. Stop buying their goods. I guarantee you, China comes across with this facade as well. If you try to force us to, and they've actually put this in writing, if you force us to pay on these bonds, this will cause economic difficulties between us. And in fact, State Department, we will hold you accountable if you cannot control your people. That was issued by the government of China, the People's Republic of China, to the U.S. Department of State, specific to these bonds. That's not being very good to the American people who've been so good to China. So Americans need to send a message back to them, pony up to the bar and treat us right, or we'll just stop buying your goods.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Now, will this really make that much of a difference if we get all this money back? I mean, how are we going to control it once it comes back into our economy? And this may be off the wall topic or question, but I mean, we get all this money back. How do you think our government will handle, or how will they spend it, or do you think they'll waste it, or what under this administration or the next administration?
Well, clearly spending is out of control in Washington, and that needs to be curbed in. I'm hoping that each day that goes by, we keep pushing for a more limited government and smaller government and smaller spending. There's no doubt. But I can't speak for the government, obviously.
Right.
I can only speak for the American Bondholders Foundation, and I can tell you what our goals and objectives are, and what I've testified before Congress on more than one occasion, and have put in writing. When this issue settles, it is 25% of the entire settlement goes to an already approved 501c3 nonprofit ABF charities. So 25% of everything collected goes to that charitable organization. Our goal and objective is to provide humanitarian, agriculture, energy programs and support all across the United States in all 50 states, whether that's providing funding for hospice foundations. There's over 1,900 volunteer hospice foundations across the U.S., whether it's helping our veterans, whether it is helping provide up-to-date certified equipment for our volunteer fire departments across the country who are in desperate need of funding to get proper equipment for them to protect our community. There is whether it's providing funding for rape crisis centers and counseling centers all across the country. You're talking an enormous amount of humanitarian relief and job opportunities that this issue provides in all 50 states.
Wow. That's pretty impressive
Not to
again.
mention, another point to mention, the tax revenues from the settlement of this It's huge going into the federal government to help fill the coffers through tax revenue, not to mention state coffers in state taxes. It's significant.
Okay, so the money we do get back is geared towards being refocused and redirected to help out major places and major organizations and people. So I think that's really good as well. So for them to hurry up and pay it back. Now, how fast do you think we could actually get some of this money back? Does it just depend on how hard we push on China?
Exactly. I mean, if the U.S. government, and it all rests in the hands of the U.S. government to tell China they got to come to the table, negotiate a settlement. Not that, keep in mind, not that we get to negotiate the 100 cents on a dollar that we're paying to China on Treasury stakehold of ours, but we're willing to negotiate this issue and settle for less than 100 cents on a dollar, which is different than what they expect of all of us. But at least the U.S. government could do is bring them to the table, negotiate a settlement. They could do that next week if they wanted to. It all depends on how strong the administration feels about this issue, how strong they feel about collecting $1 trillion that is owed by the Chinese to the American people and the U.S. government.
Okay.
So it could start very soon and begin to take care of these bondholders, put money into ABS charities, get money back into state coffers through taxes as well as our federal government.
Okay. And so what we've done today is laid out and discussed the U.S. debt ceiling and what China owes America, the various problems that we have out there, the double standards that the Chinese government is facing, what our administration is doing, what the American people can do in order to help get this resolved, and then plans and actions for the money once we get it back, hopefully very soon, on how it'll be redispersed and put back into our economy and to our society and government in very structural and help-saving ways. And so I think that's just a lot of great work that you guys are doing out there. And I can't even imagine. I'm just having a hard time imagining that amount of money just not being paid back. I mean, my credit card company would yell at me if I'm $100 late a month. I mean, that's just crazy. So.
And China gets away with it because they've not been told they have to pay it, and that requires the direction of the U.S. administration, our current president, to inform them you've got to play by the same rules and you're going to pay your bill.
I completely agree.
And if you don't pay your bill, we'll just start withholding interest payments on U.S. Treasuries to begin buying down your debt that you owe the American people and the U.S. government. It's that simple.
That is pretty simple.
It is simple, very straightforward. They try to complicate it with politics, which is not necessary. This is business. Business 101. You owe a debt, you pay a debt. You make a loan, you've got to pay it back along with the interest. It's very straightforward.
Exactly. I like that way. Just hold
their
own
stuff. It's a matter of our
stuff.
government getting a backbone, putting their feet down, and becoming the strong country that we used to be, and stop being played, and stop allowing the double set of standards.
Well said. I like that. We've got to put our boots on and step on it.
There you go.
Now, are there some future appearances that you'll be making? Where can people get in contact with you in terms of helping you in your organization, the American Bondholders Foundation? I know there's AmericanBondholdersFoundation.com. That's your website. There's you've got YouTube, which is the American Bondholders on YouTube. You can go check out their channel there. There's @AmericanBond on Twitter. You can follow them on Twitter, and then also on Facebook is the American Bondholders Foundation. Are there appearances in other places where if you go to speak to congressmen and times and events where you're going to hold organization rallies and things like that, then people can sign up for to help you out and attend these things?
Yes, we will be posting that information actually on our website at AmericanBondholdersFoundation.com, whereby you can also click and right on our website and follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. We can, you can contact us through our website. We welcome people to contact us, ask how they can help. The best thing American people can do right now is contact their congressional leader in the House and Senate and say, we are aware of the money that China owes the American people, the U.S. government, and these bondholders hold China accountable. No more double set of standards. And that's the best thing that the American people can do right now.
That's outstanding. Do you mind? You're based out of Tennessee, is that correct? Lewisburg, Tennessee?
That is correct.
Okay, and all this information in terms of contacting you is on your website. I'm mentioning it again, AmericanBondholdersFoundation.com, for them to contact you. Do you have any final thoughts you would like for everybody to know about your work, your organization, life in general, this particular issue?
Well, there's everybody has referred to me since day one as this Tennessee farm girl, Tennessee rancher, and I truly am a farm girl. I do raise quarter horses and cattle for the rodeo industry.
Nice.
And I do, and just a big rodeo girl. And although we have a lot of military in our family, this is a very, very important issue for the American people. And it's been an honor and a blessing to have the opportunity to serve these people, and the fact that they have placed their trust in me and the ABF team leadership to represent their best interest to our leadership in Washington to get justice on an issue that is long, long overdue.
Well, I have to admit, I love talking to people who have passion in life. And I can tell, Jonna, from talking to you tonight about your issues and the work that you do, you have an immense amount of passion for this. And it's people like you and your organization that stand up for people like us who don't know about these and bringing them to life, and all the hard work that you guys do, that that passion is so resounding. It's out there, and I hope that everybody, as you listen to the show, you pass it on to your friends that didn't get a chance to listen to it. All the networks and broadcast stations that this show goes across, tell them to listen to it as well. Tell them about AmericanBondholdersFoundation.com for them to go and check it out, because, again, I love talking to people with passion, and Jonna, you have some serious passion in your heart and in your voice and in your mind for this. You're incredibly intelligent about this kind of stuff, so thank you so much for all that you're doing for us.
Thank you. It's important to me because I know these bondholders. I've been in so many of their homes and met their families and listened to the stories about their grandfathers who bought these when they served in our military, that passed them down to the grandchildren, or the fathers that passed them down to the sons and daughters. And I can see the difference in their lives that this will make for them, and that will spread to their communities and across their state. And it's the right thing to do. I believe in the American justice system and law, and albeit the wheels of justice turn slow, they do turn. And we just have to keep pushing the issue until justice prevails for these American people.
Well, I agree. That's very well said. Thank you so much. Well, on behalf of everyone here at the show, all the editors, producers, and everybody who works on it, all the stations that play it, and all of our listeners all around the world, I want to thank you so much, Jonna, for being on our show. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, sir.
You have a very beautiful night.
And same to you. God bless.
God bless.
Please welcome our musical guest, Karen Sokolof Javitch with JMR Productions, singing "This is America's Moment."
This is America's moment. This is America's dream. Hope for a world filled with lasting peace. Freedom for every human being. This is one of our moments, touching the future with our past. Our fathers built this land, strong and proud, hand in hand, to make America our home. So many lifetimes of accomplishments, so many heroes sharing dreams. As we continue on their journey now, with God's blessing may we sing of a world with angels' wings to keep us soaring through all time. romance will survive, and our children will thrive in the spirit of red, white, and blue. We'll always be part of America's family, and we thank our lucky stars for this country of ours. And we know through all of time, through all the mysteries of mankind, we'll have this moment of ours. We'll have this moment. We'll have this moment of ours.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
At Taylor Gifts, we do customized monogramming and embroidery. We can monogram anything from a simple one name on a bib for a baby to a customized logo on a company shirt. We can make gifts for your wedding entourage and gifts for your friends. Label your children's items for school and put names on jerseys for sports. If you have items of your own you want them monogrammed and embroidered, we can do that. Tailor Gifts are sewn with high-quality thread on a professional embroidery machine. So go to the website www.tailorgifts.net, call 251-391-4354, email sales@tailorgifts.net, visit us at ETSY, and Facebook us. We are ready for your orders. Welcome to WROM, Realms of Music Radio and Social Network. We support independent artists and talk shows, hosting a large discussion forum and an artist gallery. We also have a large social network combining the best of Facebook and MySpace into one. So make sure you submit your music to us and create a profile to promote yourself today. That's realmsofmusic.com, the best of music radio. The Ghost Tales Television Network, GTN. GTN is designed to give the paranormal TV and filmmaking community the opportunity to showcase their talents and creations. If you believe you have what it takes to create your very own TV show and or short film and you would like the opportunity to showcase your creations, you may contact us at ghosttalestv@gmail.com or call 901-377-7166 for more details. Make sure you visit ghosttalestv.com. GTN, America's Paranormal Superstation. Jackalope 105 FM on jackaloperadio.com. Your alternative to the grind of internet and FM radio. When we say diversity in programming, we mean it. Lots of stations brag, throw out a hype, and pad their numbers. Well, we don't. Accept no limitations. When you truly want awesome 24-hour radio, tune in to Jackalope and rock your routine. Jackalope 105 FM on jackaloperadio.com.
Thank you for listening to the show. I am your host, Bryan Lee Whatley. I hope you have an amazing weekend, and I look forward to seeing you next time when another story begins. Until then, love and light.